in your view, how is this new plan going to look?
Well, look, I think it's fantastic. I mean, it's about creating jobs. And it's not just the city. I mean, this is, there's parts of regional cities and regional centres which likewise want to be able to see what they can do to bolster the opportunities at night for people to work, enjoy themselves. And certainly in terms of Sydney over the years, we have seen many restrictions, a lot of frustration on the part of small business, small bars and the like, and live music, where we want to try and just reinvigorate the city as a truly global city as we come out of the pandemic. So Minister Ayres is leading the charge here, and certainly from my perspective as Transport Minister, we're very keen to see what we can do to assist, offer more public transport in the evenings to try and encourage people into some of those, incredibly, I think, dynamic areas where we can see great opportunity for people to enjoy each other's company and enjoy live music and get out and have a good time.
How do you assuage the concerns of people, though, when it comes to, nighttime violence? It's why, of course, this all got wound back in the first place, particularly around King's Cross. So what do you do, to sort of ease any kind of tensions around that?
Well, I think there's a degree of responsibility on the part of the community. I mean, if government has to react like we saw the government react with King's Cross, it was obvious that there was a problem. And at the end of the day, a lot of people lost out because of that type of misbehaviour. We're very mindful of alcohol and drug-fuelled violence, so I think it's unfair on our police, our paramedics, our frontline emergency department staff at the hospitals. And that's where, ultimately, the culture has to change. This is not just about saying, right, well, let's just turn everything back into the cross again. Let's actually look at what we can do to drive a different type of culture in Australia, which is more inviting, a lot more kind in the way in which people are out and about and not revelling, but actually going out and enjoying things. And, I love live music, and I think a lot of people are out there, would love to see the live music scene come back to life. We love it in the country where I come from. We love it in the city, and I think there's a real opportunity to turn things around post-COVID.
All right, put up or shut up. They are the words from John Barilaro this morning to any of his critics. How are you going to work with him going forward?
Well, look, as the Premier said yesterday, the National Party leadership's a matter for the National Party room. The thing there is that this type of language and response from John this morning, it's not going to help. It's not going to help him today. It's going to raise more eyebrows. I think the thing out of this is that the Premier a week ago undertook that the koala SEP, that green tape that's the cause of this, is coming to Cabinet in many ways for the first time, next month. And I don't understand why the Nats knew that. And it's not as if they haven't had ample time to raise this throughout the course of this year. There's been plenty of Cabinet meetings where this could have been brought forward by the Deputy Premier. So, look, I think the thing about it is that that needs to be resolved and renewed. That's been given an undertaking. But in terms of John, he's made it very hard. He's made it hard on me as a country Liberal. The Nationals on Friday afternoon at 3:50 sent out a text message to 5 victims who'd, basically lost everything earlier this year. And they're lodging DAs at the moment to try and rebuild. And we have excised out, any requirement of any ecological study on their places to help them rebuild. Now, I went and did that. I did that as the member for Bega, and I went and advocated that to my colleagues. We've got an undertaking that private native forestry is now going to be not part of this SEP, this state environmental planning policy. So that's a good outcome for the forestry industry. And so, the thing is, by working constructively, you can get great outcomes in a government. And I think if I have any disappointment, particularly with John personally, I think the thing that has upset me the most, not only was that text message last week, but to targeting me in my own constituency, but also, last week he was trying to divide the city and the country. In the old days, city and country people were together. They were unified. There's no us and them mentality. I come from an area which, loves the way that city people have looked after and cared for them this year with the fire response and the drought response. You know, and that's where this is falling down. This is not an us versus them, country versus city argument. Now, John tried to put that last week when he was talking about the city's rubbish coming to the bush. And, I mean, that is not what we need.
Well, they think they're getting a raw deal, that it's impeding on land rights. Is it?
Well, again, I mean, there's a raft of measures with state-based legislation which is impacting people's property rights in the bush. Now, the thing is that if this is such the raw deal that it is, and there's elements of it which, quite frankly, you know, there's got to be a review. We've said that. But you do it through the process because, and this is the Premier's point, bring it to Cabinet. Let's resolve it internally. Let's resolve it at the kitchen table, not out in the front lawn. And, you know, I think certainly with this SEP as it relates to koalas, I think the first point that I'd make is that the animal is under threat. We saw 5.5 million hectares burn out last fire season. The colonies have been decimated. The animal numbers have been decimated. And everybody wants to look after the koala. I mean, it's one of our national icons. But at the same time, you know, farmers have to coexist with many of our native species and native flora. And the challenge here is getting that balance right. Farmers can build driveways, they can build fences, they can build sheds without triggering the SEP. But John said that was the case. Well, that's not the case. This is triggered when you lodge a DA, and particularly in coastal areas where there is subdivision developments now happening on farmland. It does trigger an assessment as to, you know, what koalas are there. The maps have actually, you know, in terms of the overall landmass of New South Wales compared to the old SEP, have changed. But, you know, let's have a review of the guidelines because I think there's some improvements that need to be made there, and that's the best way to deal with it moving forward.
Well, you got, and you would have heard just then, David Elliott calling John Barilaro weak, says his position is untenable. There certainly does seem to be a lot of friction within the coalition at the moment. It's almost as if it's a coalition in name only. Is the relationship beyond repair?
Well, I'd hope not, because what I've seen in the 18 years I've been in Parliament is the Nationals work incredibly tight and well with the opposition and the government of the day. I mean, you know, we've got a Nationals, you know, coalition across this country which has produced some incredible leaders and, you know, ultimately some really good outcomes. Now, in terms of regional New South Wales, I mean, I can say this because coming from there, I mean, this government has been superb in terms of funding infrastructure and delivering services. And country people remember what life was like under Labor. And I said this yesterday. I mean, John's main opponent and his challenge as the Nationals leader in terms of the Nats' survival is not the Liberal Party. It is the Labor Shooters coalition, where they are very, very tight-knit and their preference flows are hurting the Nats. Now, that's happening across the board. I mean, the Nats have, you know, we've seen some big challenges, and that's why they need to work with Libs like me, and we'll continue to get results for the bush. And John has a lot of good things he can point to as Deputy Premier, where he's achieved incredible outcomes in the bush. But you know, he's blown that all up. That's now a matter of history, and we're dealing with real time. And what he did last week, at a time when the Premier on Friday morning was meeting with the Victorians over contact tracing and how to improve it, you know, there was this dust up in town involving the Nats. Now, most people sit back, shake their heads at that. Most people watching this interview now would be sitting on their couches or in their kitchens just going, what the hell, you guys? You know, pull your heads in. I mean, this is not how your politicians should behave. It's not how your leaders should behave. They've had a gutful of this. They've had a gutful of politics. I said this earlier in the year around the fires. This is another case example of that. So, you know, I think, over to the Nats in terms of their leadership. But, you know, at the same time, I mean, I read Nats are upset about John being targeted in this way. Well, you know, John's also on the odd occasion called on a Liberal Prime Minister to resign or a Liberal Minister to resign. I mean, so, you know, fair's fair in that space. But, you know, we've got to have a strong coalition moving forward because that's what people in National Party seats voted for. They voted for the Nats to be part of a government to deliver for them after the 16 years of Labor they had previously.